In the shadows of royal power, deep secrets still exist. But when the fortress of silence begins to crack, the whole world witnesses a grueling battle between duty and life itself. The story of Princess Catherine is not just about health. It is a struggle between eternity and true humanity, one that has forever changed the image of the crown. Do you sympathize with this courage? Comment 1 if you admire it, or 0 if you have a different perspective. Don't forget to like and subscribe so we can explore the mystery together. There are moments when time itself seems to stand still, when even the most solid stone walls of history cannot hold back the ripples of change. Buckingham Palace has just released a message that has shaken the hearts of millions. Gone are the rigid formalities of royal protocol. King Charles and Prince William appeared together in a rare moment of shared empathy, opening up about a profoundly challenging chapter in the life of Princess Catherine. For months, speculation hung over London like a thick fog. Yet when the truth was finally revealed, its weight surpassed all imagination. As the world holds its breath, the British royal family is confronting a stark reality, one where titles and crowns offer no shield against the unforgiving laws of nature. Before we unravel the deeper meanings of this turning point for the future of the monarchy, join us by subscribing to stay updated with the most authentic and insightful information. In a rare display of unity, the monarch and his heir stood side by side. On their faces, there was no trace of their usual majesty, only the weight of compassion. For an institution that has long held composure as its guiding principle, this moment marked a painful break from tradition. The words were spoken softly, yet their impact felt like a psychological earthquake. This was not an ordinary medical update. It was a vulnerable confession that shattered the illusion of perfection the palace had carefully upheld for over a century. William, long known for his steely resolve, now appeared with an emotion he could scarcely conceal. His voice, though still measured, carried undertones of uncertainty. King Charles, in a moment that transcended his role as sovereign, referred to Catherine as the heart of the family. This was not merely the voice of a monarch. It was the voice of a father watching a loved one endure the storm. That very sincerity sparked an emotional wave that resonated across the globe. From the flickering candles at Windsor to messages sent across oceans, the world is sharing a solemn, reverent silence. Everything has changed because deep down, we all understand this truth. Behind those gilded iron gates lies a quiet battle for peace. But what led to this heartbreaking turning point? To grasp the reality, we must turn back time to the moment when the first cracks began to appear. Princess Catherine's absence was initially regarded as nothing more than a routine period of rest. Yet as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the silence took on the weight of unease. There were no casual photographs, no radiant smiles before the camera's hallmarks of Catherine's public presence. Her complete withdrawal from public life raised a pressing question: was something beyond control unfolding behind the scenes? Even the closest security staff and aides were enveloped in an atmosphere of strict discretion. Privacy was no longer a choice. It had become the final fortress protecting what mattered most. When official engagements were canceled without clear explanation, and when representatives began relying on vague language, the public understood they were witnessing something unprecedented. An anonymous staff member once remarked, "Things are not as simple as what's written in the press." Now, as part of the truth has come to light, we realize that the greatest value lies not in leaked information, but in the inner strength of a human being facing adversity. Catherine, the woman long associated with grace, is writing a new chapter not through visibility, but through quiet courage. Everything has entered a new chapter, one that cannot be reversed. The image of an unchanging, flawless royal family is gradually giving way to a different reality. Behind the velvet curtains of the palace, truth is no longer something that can be neatly packaged and controlled. As the outside world begins to connect the scattered pieces, it becomes clear that this is not merely a delay in a recovery journey. It is the transformation of a legend where royal splendor is being forced to confront vulnerability and deeply human fears. Now, Prince William carries more than the weight of a future king's responsibility. In the shadows of the long corridors of Adelaide Cottage, he finds himself at the very center of the storm as a husband. Sources close to him describe a profound psychological shift. The familiar calm has been replaced by a constant undercurrent of worry. For the first time in his life, diplomatic rules and courtly protocol have become meaningless. This is not a media crisis to be managed. It is a battle to protect the woman he loves most. A battle in which political power has no voice. William, trained from childhood to restrain emotion, now finds himself surrounded by a sense of helplessness before fate. On sleepless nights gazing out the window, he is not searching for political solutions, but for a fragile glimmer of hope within the frightening stillness of the house. The breaking point did not come from natural events, but from a collision between two worlds. On one side, an advisory machine steadfast in its belief in strategic silence to preserve stability. On the other, the heart of someone living through the crisis. Heated debates erupted behind closed doors. Media experts worried about the turbulence of public opinion, but William saw something far more important: the dignity of truth. In a moment that defied all precedent, a private message was sent to the monarch, brief yet resolute. She deserves more than silence. It was a declaration marking the end of an era of forced mystery. William no longer cared about staged photographs or hollow press statements. His only concern was the woman who had walked beside him through life's highs and lows. As tensions reached their peak, King Charles, long known for his extreme caution, made a decision that would completely change the course of events. After witnessing his son's quiet pain and his daughter-in-law's resilience, every remaining barrier of protocol dissolved. In a historic meeting at Clarence House, the king affirmed, "No more hiding. Let the world see the strength of perseverance." This step marked a deeply human shift in power. After a brief private visit to Catherine's hospital bedside, the raw truth reached the heart of the head of the monarchy. What he saw was not a symbol recovering according to plan, but a soul striving to make its way through the valley of life's most grueling trials. When the king left Windsor with a pale face and a heavy spirit, the entire royal household understood the whispers were over, and a new reality had begun. The silence that followed was no longer meant to conceal, but a silence born of respect for a profoundly personal and courageous battle. Everything has truly changed, and history will remember this moment as proof that beneath the royal cloak, the heart remains the most powerful guide of all. In the quiet halls of the palace, an unprecedented struggle for power erupted, but not over the throne, rather over the truth. As cautious voices sought to wrap the situation in vague statements, King Charles exercised a rare prerogative, the decisiveness of a father. For the first time, he set aside all diplomatic convention in favor of transparency. This action not only sent shockwaves through those closest to the palace, but also healed a silent fracture. Charles and William, two generations of monarchy, found common ground in shared pain. They were no longer acting as king and heir, but as two men protecting a world threatened by an invisible adversity. Every word in the forthcoming message was weighed not to preserve appearances, but to honor the dignity of a mother and a wife fighting with resilience. Yet what the world is about to learn is only the tip of the iceberg. Confidential materials and first-hand accounts from insiders reveal a chilling reality. Catherine's trial did not begin recently. Signs of instability had already surfaced in late 2023, hidden behind troubling blood test results. For months, the truth was concealed beneath a veneer of stability. Why did the palace keep it secret? The answer lies in a harsh royal philosophy: the symbol must not be allowed to waver. Even as pain became part of daily life, Catherine continued to appear with a radiant smile, chair meetings, and lead educational initiatives. It was a silent sacrifice, where an iron will struggled to overpower physical exhaustion. Behind the stage lights, the velvet curtains concealed her weakest moments. There were times Catherine collapsed backstage at charity events, yet the swift motion of security and media transformed them into ordinary migraines. William witnessed it all, from worrying weight loss to long, sleepless nights. He pleaded with her to stop, but Catherine, bound by unwavering devotion to duty, refused. Catherine is not only battling adversity, she is fighting to uphold faith for an entire monarchy. This quiet sacrifice between the dazzling stage lights and moments of collapse behind the scenes paints a portrait of a figure far beyond ordinary protocol. Comment 2. If you feel moved and admire the steel will of this crown-bearing woman. Or comment 5 if you have a different reflection on the price she has had to pay. Don't forget to like and subscribe now to continue uncovering these inspiring archival stories and never miss another heart-stirring tale. The tension between an unfallible symbol and a human growing ever more fragile pushed the royal family into a precarious position. Senior aides feared that if both the king and the princess showed weakness simultaneously, the illusion of institutional strength would collapse. They chose silence to protect the throne, but forgot the price of isolation. Catherine's story is not merely the tale of a royal. It is a lesson on the limits of humanity when faced with a higher duty. As cameras prepared to capture historic footage, the world would come to understand sometimes the greatest strength does not lie in the crown atop one's head, but in the courage to face the truth, even when that truth has the power to change everything we thought we knew about a monarchy. For the sake of stability, a curtain of secrecy was drawn. Catherine accepted it, trusting that these trials were only a brief chapter in her journey of recovery. Yet time and the laws of nature wait for no arrangement. As the palace prepared to speak, reality had already moved beyond their control. The most loyal aides began to question: is silence still golden, or is it slowly eroding trust between an age-old institution and the public? William, torn between his duty as a prince and his heart as a husband, began to realize that the fortress of secrets was becoming a prison of pain. The throne built on influence and image now faced a cruel test of sincerity. Then, without any staged ceremony or coordinated press release, Catherine made a move that shook the nation. In a simple setting, a garden where the laughter of children once echoed, she chose to face the world directly. In just 94 seconds, the royal veil was completely pierced by a heartbreaking honesty. There was no royal glamour, no shield of advisors, only a woman speaking about the trials of her life with absolute clarity. She began with words of gratitude, But it was what came next that made millions of hearts stop. Every word Catherine spoke swept through the silence like a storm. She did not dwell on technical details, but spoke of family resilience and the right to retain a private space amid the chaos. Yet beneath that composure lay a profound emotion, a confession so sincere that it was clear this was not merely a medical update, but a deeply human sharing about the fragility of life. The world's response was an immense wave of emotion. From national leaders to ordinary citizens, everyone found connection through shared pain. Spontaneous candlelight vigils and quiet prayers were no longer for a title, but for a mother and wife, standing at the center of a storm, choosing truth over tradition. That moment has forever changed the image of the monarchy. The acknowledgement of vulnerability shattered the cold, distant facade, revealing the raw beauty of truth. Behind the scenes, emotional wounds remained. William, in an unrestrained moment at a public event, shed tears before the crowd, an unprecedented image in modern history. Even the press, usually relentless in pursuing every detail, chose to step back out of respect for this silence. They understood that this was no longer news to dissect, but a journey of the soul unfolding in real time. The monarchy has now transformed. It is no longer defined solely by titles or lineage, but by the courage to live authentically and embrace one's true humanity. Catherine's story is not just one of survival. It is a lesson on the cost of silence and the power of sincerity. She did what no royal symbol before her had dared reveal: the fragility beneath a radiant cloak. It is precisely this openness that has turned Catherine from a princess into a guiding soul, forcing a palace, once a fortress of secrets, to move in rhythm with her heartbeat. Yet while the world honors Catherine's bravery behind the heavy oak doors, another battle quietly ignites. This is not merely a fight against illness, but a struggle shaping the future of a 1,000-year-old institution. In strategic meeting rooms, the air is thick with calculation. Harsh questions arose. Who would represent the monarchy if Catherine's radiance receded? Old alliances fractured, and new schemes began to take root. Not everyone looked in the same direction, and not every heart within the castle beat in rhythm with the woman resting. As the reality of Catherine's absence became a daunting prospect, conflicting viewpoints collided. Some voices sought to fill the void with traditional rituals, aiming to maintain the monarchy's public presence. But this intervention met a steel wall of loyalty. Princess Anne and the Duchess of Edinburgh rose as guardians of Catherine's legacy. They understood that hastily replacing a symbol was not only a betrayal of familial bonds, but also an act that could destroy public trust. To them, Catherine was the last thread capable of mending a monarchy facing the fractures of the age. At the center of the storm, Prince William stood firm like a lighthouse amid turbulent seas. He rejected all contingency plans, all possible replacements, no matter how minor. To William, acknowledging a plan B would be tantamount to surrendering to fate, and that was something he would never do. His cold decisiveness before the advisors sent a powerful message. Catherine is not a pawn on the political chessboard. She is the soul of this household. Despite the crushing pressure to maintain the continuity of the institution, and despite drafts of task restructuring already laid out on the table, William chose to place his trust in the miracle of willpower. Then, just as the darkness of doubt loomed heaviest, a ray of light pierced the night. A new message emerged, not from aides but from Catherine herself. With heartfelt sincerity, she shared what once seemed impossible. There were signs of triumph in the battle. Her illness had abated. Light had returned to the eyes of the mother, the wife, and the future queen. She spoke of gratitude, of resilience forged through the darkest hours. Treatment had borne fruit, and life once again asserted itself against the cruelty of fate. Though the joyous news had arrived, shadows of the past left profound lessons. This crisis revealed a truth. The prestige of a monarchy does not lie in stone walls or noble titles, but in the human connection between its leaders and the people. Catherine has triumphed not only over illness, but also over outdated rules redefining the value of the crown. A new chapter is unfolding where strength comes not from mystery, but from sincerity and compassion. News of Catherine's remission spread across the world like a wave of quiet jubilation. The media called it a miracle, and social media erupted with prayers. Yet for Catherine, this was not a blazing victory anthem. She faced this reality with the insight of someone who had walked through the valley of darkness, not as a destination, but as a steadfast step on a long path full of uncertainties. Though now stable, the mark of stormy months still lingers in every gesture. Her voice, though steadier, carries the breath of someone who has touched the very limits of endurance. Catherine's candidness about her recovery process has received wholehearted support from the professional community. 6 Within the palace, a new order had been established. Prince William, with devoted protection, set strict boundaries for his wife's return. Catherine reappeared still graceful, but carrying a more subdued and wise beauty. She no longer tried to force herself to shine. She simply existed, and that presence, though more delicate than before, held the power to ignite hope stronger than any speech. A moment touched the hearts of humanity, the image of Catherine walking hand in hand with her children across the school grounds. It was not a royal ritual, but a wordless message of life continuing. Beyond the palace walls, beyond noble titles, she was first and foremost a mother fighting to preserve her children's peace amid the storm. Yet behind that calm tension within the palace remained. Unanswered questions about the future still lingered. What would happen if darkness returned? These doubts were no longer brushed aside. They became catalysts for decisions that could reshape the foundation of an entire monarchy. King Charles, standing beside the heir, acknowledged a profound truth. Catherine's courage had redefined the image of royalty. She achieved what decades of protocol and ceremony could not, restoring humanity to the monarchy. Now power no longer lay in displays of authority, but in the resilience to endure the world's scrutiny while battling the fiercest personal wars. Immutable rules were quietly being adjusted. The palace no longer tried to maintain the illusion of eternal strength. They learned to accept vulnerability as part of evolution. Catherine's legacy would not be confined to royal procedures. She placed compassion at the heart of every action. Quiet visits, advocacy for mental health, and early childhood education now carried a more vivid meaning. She taught the world that strength does not always roar. Sometimes it is the whisper of a mother holding on to what is most precious. In the darkest days, she is said to have written private letters to George, Charlotte, and Louis, messages for the future if she could not return. Whether or not those letters were ever opened, they became part of the legend of a woman who stood at the edge and chose to fight. Catherine did not merely cling to her role. She turned her pain into purpose. Her battle may not be over, but her strength has redrawn the map of the monarchy's destiny. The world will never see her the same way again, for they have glimpsed the portrait of a queen in spirit, a woman who reminded us that even in adversity, grace and determination can create miracles. Catherine's journey is not merely the story of a title or a crown, but an epic of willpower, sincerity, and the cost of compassion. She taught us that the greatest strength sometimes does not lie in majesty, but in the courage to be vulnerable and honest with the world. A new chapter of royal history has begun, a chapter written in humanity rather than in rigid ritual. At this point, we want to hear from you. How do you feel about Catherine's inspiring journey of revival? Do you think this humanization could help the British monarchy remain resilient amid the challenges of the modern era? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We truly value every perspective. If this video has brought you special emotions or valuable insights, don't forget to hit like to show support for our content team. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss in-depth documentaries about some of the world's most influential figures. Thank you for watching and see you in the next videos.